My name is Kristin Selby Gonzalez, and I am going to be doing a lecture today called Cutting Edge Therapies for Sensory Integration. This is Module 3 out of the 5 modules that we're doing. And before I get started, if you have not watched Module 1 or Module 2, I would highly recommend going back and watching those. But just in case you haven't watched them, I'll give you a little bit of background about my kiddo. He was diagnosed at 2 years, 4 months, and he wasn't looking or talking, definitely had all the characteristics of what we would think of as classic autism. And at that time, they told me he would never be able to look or talk or basically have any friends, and, they didn't believe he would even be able to use a spoon and a fork. We really researched as much as we could to try to help him and try to give him the best tools that we could find to basically help him overcome his challenges. Today he's not fully recovered, but my goodness, he is looking, he's talking, he's riding a bike, he's potty trained, he's learning to read, he's learning to write. And a lot of why we believe he's doing that is because of a lot of the things we've talked about in these modules 1 through 5. One thing I want to say is that, it's not a one-size-fits-all. If you've been watching the modules, you've heard me say that time and time again. My son is 10 years old now and definitely has a ways to go, but my goodness, he continues to climb this ladder, and we really believe the sky is the limit for him. Sensory integration is definitely something that a lot of the children on the autism spectrum are dealing with. And so we're going to be talking today about different options and therapies and different tools that are out there for our kiddos. Before I get started with that, I want to give you a brief description on what sensory integration is. Sensory integration is the theory and treatment that was originally the work of Jean Ayres. We think of her as almost the mother of sensory integration. Everything we think, feel, taste, and hear involves using our sensory. It's basically how our bodies process information. It's what we're taking in and then how we receive it and what we do with it. Obviously, we've all heard about having, our 5 senses. We see, we smell, we taste, we hear, and we touch. These are all ways that our body is able to take in that input from our, outside surroundings. When we think about sensory integration for our children, one thing to really think about, first of all, if you've been watching the modules, you've heard me say this before, but just in case you haven't seen the others, I believe that it doesn't matter what age your child's at. So you'll hear me say children, but I don't care if you're 2, 32, or 52. You're somebody's child. And so to me, I think it's important for us to really look at it through, the person's eyes or the child's eyes. Because everything our children do, they're doing it for a reason. Again, they're trying to make sense of a world that does not make sense to them. And I really believe instead of trying to stop or change basically what they're doing, let's look at why they're doing it. Why are they having a sensory overloading moment, Let's figure out how to give them coping strategies and help them figure out how to self-regulate. Our children cannot process when they're having sensory integration issues. A lot of them can't process the sights or the sounds, the smells, the tactile sensations, because a lot of times it puts them in fight or flight, and sometimes people will say fight, flight, or fright. And what I mean by that is I want you to think about when you're walking down, let's say, a dark alley, right? You're walking down this dark alley, and maybe you're in a neighborhood that's not so good. So you're walking down a dark alley late at night. The neighborhood's not so good, but you have to go through that alley to maybe get to your car or something. Well, immediately you hear a noise and your body starts to kind of jump. And you start to get those little hairs on the back of your neck kind of stand up. Well, what you've done is you've gone into flight or fight mode, because now if someone were to come at you, you're almost ready for the attack because you're in a constant state of fear at that moment. Well, imagine some of our kids, they're always in that state because, again, this world sometimes doesn't make sense to them. So it's up to us to figure out how to give them those tools and techniques in order to help, kind of build their trust in the world and be able to help them have coping mechanisms and self-regulation tools. And again, imagine what you would do in the situations that our kids might be in. A lot of times we're putting them in new situations and maybe they don't understand that. Think about maybe the lights are too much for them, or the sounds are too much for them, or maybe the smells wherever they're at are too much for them. We don't know what thing is the trigger. Everybody's different. However, what we do know is there are definitely therapies out there that can help with different strategies to kind of implement into your child's routine. The one thing I would really love you guys to get out of this lecture is don't ask, how can I change my child's behavior? That is huge. I get that question asked all the time, like, how do I get my child to stop doing X when I really want them to be doing Y? Now, here's the thing. We first need to figure out why they're doing X. We don't want to be able to stomp that out when really we got to figure out what the underlying condition is. So what I'd like you to think about is, instead of trying to accomplish stomping out their behaviors, let's ask ourselves, how can I help them with this, right? Because what they're doing is they're trying to get something from it, whether that be they're seeking input in some way, whether that be that they're closing off the sensory, so maybe they're humming and rocking and covering their ears, but that's the way for them to basically block out a lot of the stimuli that's coming at them. When we look at children who are sensitive, there's two different ways we kind of look at that. We look at them being hyper-reactive, or we look at them being hypo-reactive. When a child's hyper-reactive, that means they're sensitive to things like sounds, light, textures, smells, taste. When a child's hypo-reactive, that means that they're unaware of loud sounds, pain, bruises, lack of attention to the environment, people, or things. These are children that can spin round and round and round and appear to never get dizzy. Perhaps they have delayed responses. I remember my son, you could say something to him, and sometimes, like a couple days later, he might say a word, and it would take us a few days to figure out, oh my gosh, he was answering a question we had asked him 2 days prior. And so, when you're thinking about your own kiddo, or maybe a child you're working with, think about, some of the things that they could be sensitive to or unaware. A lot of times we see crossover with that as well. I know with my own son, I've seen crossover with that. And so we don't want to believe that just because a child is unaware, it means that then they, that's better or worse. A lot of times they're just shutting down, and so that's their way of kind of coping or self-regulating. My son is sensitive to, sounds at moments, so he'll cover his ears, right? We've been able to give him tools and techniques to be able to help him be able to cope and self-regulate, so that way we're helping him get into mainstream, helping him get into socially acceptable behaviors, because I want him to be able to go out in the world without having to cover his ears, or if a child did need to cover their ears, perhaps there's other ways we can give them tools to where they become socially appropriate in mainstream. And again, that's what kind of we're looking at when we're looking at kids on the spectrum, and especially children who have sensory integration issues. I never believe a child is being bad or having a meltdown on purpose. I believe the child is really trying to do their very best, and again, they don't have those tools yet, and it's up to us to be able to give those tools to them, so that way they can be set up for success and not failure. There's a program we're going to talk about in a little bit called the Alert Program, and that's really what I learned from them. Was they constantly say, let's set the children up for success, not failure. And when you think about that with our kiddos, whether it be in a classroom setting, whether it be in the grocery store, whether it be at the mall, a doctor's office, even at home, we need to really look at the surroundings in our home and our environment to be able to give that child or that person the best chance of success. And again, there are many different programs. These are just a few of my favorites, and I'm very excited to talk about them today. The listening program. This is one of my favorites. This program is great. What this is basically there are specific headphones you wear with specifically designed music that basically it really helps with children that are having sensitivity to different things in the auditory system. And not only does it help with the auditory system, but it also helps basically even further. It helps with fine motor and gross motor. And, many of you guys have heard of auditory integration therapy. This particular program I really love. And again, it's from the listening program at Advanced Brain Technologies. And why I love this program is they really have something going here, because they have something called ABC modular design. And what that means is they do a warm up, a workout, and a cool down phase. So what happens is this music is specifically developed and specifically specifically designed to basically help with the processing, what's going on, in the brain. And what I love with that is that this is something you can do at home. They have a new program called TLP Spectrum, and it's very, very affordable. I believe it's a one-time cost. For the last I heard, I think it was like around $125 to start up, and then they have something that's like $25 a month that you pay. And basically, you put all your children's information into a particular system. The system then basically customizes a program for your child, and then it's done on a monthly basis where basically when your child signs in, it automatically knows where the child left off with their listening. Amazing, just absolutely amazing what the listening program has done for our community. And I love the fact that TLP, which stands for the listening program, TLP Spectrum, was specifically designed with the autism community in mind. Huge, 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 definitely very affordable, something that I believe that many of our children would benefit from, if not all. I believe that even us as adults completely benefit from doing listening. Please check them out. A lot of our kids become hyper after doing certain listening programs, and that's because there is not a warm-up, workout, and cool-down phase. Think about this. If you're in a treadmill, what happens? You do a warm-up. Then you go real crazy and you do your workout. And then what does the treadmill automatically do? It says cool-down phase. It allows that body to have a cool-down process, so then that way your body starts to regulate again. Same thing with the listening program for the auditory. Love it, love it, love it. Can't say enough good things about it. The one thing before you do any listening program, I would highly, highly recommend making sure to get the child's hearing tested to make sure that it's not hearing issues, that it's really auditory processing issues. They also have special headphones that they call bone conduction headphones, which basically if the child does have issues with the middle ear, it bypasses that and goes, the child's able to listen through bone conduction. If you kind of humor me for a moment, if you were to cover your ears and say, la, 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 you basically are hearing your voice through bone conduction, and that's the best way I can describe bone conduction to you. If you go to advancedbrain.com, that is where you'd find out more information about them. Again, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful program. Can't say enough good things. Definitely check them out for your children and even for yourself.